Welcome to our webinar on cryptocurrency regulations in Turkey. Today, as a EAK Digital team, we will do a new webinar series with the prominent speakers. Today, we will discuss the current state of the cryptocurrency regulations in Turkey and the potential developments we might see in the future with our expert and prominent guest, Tansel Kaya, Burçak Ünsal, Elçin Karatay, and Atakan Karataş. We will dive into Turkey's path and prospective route in this rapid growing sector as regulations. The first guest is the Elçin Karatay, who works in the managing partner at the Solok Partners and law firm. Welcome, the Elçin Karatay. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm great. I hope you're too. How are you?
We are so happy to see the upcoming regulations results as soon as possible. That's why we are so wondering at the same time how it is. And also, welcome, Didi. How are you?
Hello. I'm good. I'm great, and a little bit excited about the upcoming regulations. Also, Elçin, we really would like to understand how will crypto regulations is going to affect our lives in terms of our projects and the global projects, not only regarding the exchange, but we are also very curious about what will happen about the projects who wants to dive into Turkey.
Sure. Let me try to help. Thank you again for everyone listening and for your organization and having me here. So let me try to first maybe explain what's currently in Turkey and what we expect to come. So for Turkey, we have seen through the last years, there are, bits and pieces of regulations going on, but we haven't seen a wide and comprehensive law adopted in the Turkish market. And we had some concerns related to how the cryptocurrencies will be regulated in the Turkish market. So as of now, although there are, again, small regulations, such as there is one regulations from the central bank, which is related to use of crypto assets in payments, which is a very limited regulation, to be honest. But we haven't seen any general regulation on crypto assets, on crypto asset service providers, unlike what we see in EU or other countries. So that is something that we have expected for a long time. Turkey also has a regulation on the AML KYC part of the issues, which is something that Financial Action Task Force actually recommends from its 2019 recommendations, and Turkey is a party of Financial Action Task Force. So we should abide by those recommendations. And there has been a change on our standard AML laws, which included crypto asset service providers to these laws. But again, this only puts an obligation on the crypto asset service providers to do KYC, basically know your customer procedures, to have suspicion activity reporting, and have some additional requirements provided under the AML laws, but still did provide a comprehensive legal approach. So what we have been waiting for a long time is a general way of regulating both virtual assets, virtual asset service providers, and virtual asset services. And that was what was expected. Unlike European Union, which has a lot of drafting processes, we unfortunately do not have an official draft published, but several of our ministers has shared their views that they want to adopt this law at the end of January. So we passed end of January, but we still expect a law to be enacted in a very close future, subject to what they have discussed. It's also written under, several commissions report that this law has been reviewed. It is also a fact that the Capital Markets Board and several additional institutions have made a meeting with virtual asset service providers currently active in Turkey, some banks, and they got some feedback. So we are expecting these laws to come. And although there is no official draft going on, there are some unofficial draft which has been published by several real persons, and we had the opportunity to read those drafts and have an idea about what to expect from the law. But again, this is very vague. We don't know if the text that we see will be the ones that will actually be enacted. So that's something that we will see, but I'll try to help you understand what the drafts that we're seeing, the unofficial drafts that we're seeing is saying, having the notes to all of the audience that this may not be the final version of the law which will be enacted.
I appreciate your insightful comments. I agree that Turkey's regulations around the cryptocurrencies are heading in the direction of the more organized and true frameworks that strike a balance between investor protection and innovation. So the upcoming question is that what impact will the new draft law have on cryptocurrency regulations?
Sure. So, although we don't know what is the last thing that will be enacted through the court, through the parliaments, basically not having a regulation and having everything on a gray area, I think has a very negative impact, especially for corporate requirement perspective. For large companies, for public companies, it creates a very big risk that they don't want to take and they don't want to invest in Turkey. So that's an important thing. I think having a regulation, if it's not very limited, will affect the Turkish market positively in any event. But what we're expecting from the current law is not to have a generic definition for the virtual assets, so that it'll probably say, very generically that virtual assets are based on blockchain systems, and it will have detailed terms relating to virtual asset service providers, which sometimes we call crypto exchanges. Of course, it's not only limited to crypto exchanges. There are a lot of other virtual asset services that has been provided under EU laws, for example. But we expect that mostly the two aspects will be regulated. One being how we keep those assets, so basically the custody services, and the second being the platform services, which is exchanges of these crypto assets between clients, sometimes with between virtual assets or virtual asset to fiat currencies such as Turkish lira. So that's what we expect a lot of regulation to come from. And there's two reasons for it. One is, again, the mentioned Financial Action Task Force, because under their recommendations, they're not only saying that, there should be some AML KYC compliance, but they're also saying that there should be, some kind of licensing or listing requirement. And Mehmet Şimşek, who is the minister, also predominantly talks about this and say that, okay, Turkey is in the gray list and we want to get Turkey out of this gray list. So that's why we want to comply with these requirements. And this is one of the requirements that we see as we're not perfectly compliant with. So they are trying to achieve that requirements. And that's why we also wait for a lot of regulations. There is a grandfathering term, which is the term used for these processes when a law is enacted, but not everything is regulated, right? So the law, the unofficial draft law, also refers a lot to the secondary legislation. So what we expect is the law to have a very generic terms, and then the secondary legislation to have more detailed terms around it. So the unofficial draft law, again, we don't know if that it will pass like that, has a term which suggests if you are currently active when the law is enacted, you can continue acting as a virtual asset service provider and the platforms. But if you're not active, you need to wait for the secondary legislation to come out, and then you need to have a license. So this will basically create a competitive advantage to any platform who's already working in Turkey. And it also created an incentive for anyone to, be active in Turkey before this law is enacted. This is not something that I love. I think, any law should give the same opportunities to the same players, because we don't have any time frame for enactment, because we don't see the official drafts before. I think it is not really fair for all the companies to be out of the market during this grandfathering regime, to be honest. But there is such a term, and let's see how that will enact it. So that may create a gap where the active market participants has a benefit in terms of competition. Having said this, if the licensing and the secondary legislation will be in a very short notice, that's not a problem. There is a 6-month time limitation. Let's see if they can be able to hold that. If that happens, that's great. But if the secondary legislation take a lot of time to enact, like 1 year, 2 years, then that will have a negative effect on the market. So we hope that the secondary legislation and licensing conditions will be very quick, and will not have a lot of entry barriers, because if they make like a very hard to get licenses, it will create very few players in the market, which is not good for competition.
Thank you for your valuable comments and predictions of the new draft law is much appreciated. It's clear that this regulation has the potential to revolutionize in the industry by bringing more security and clarity to the markets, especially as you know, the tracking the transactions is so more important than the previous years. A critical aspect for the service providers as well as investors deal and making a deal and legitimate is so important. And also the next question is regarding to what predictions can we make for cryptocurrency regulations in Turkey post 2024 from a micro and macro perspective, because as you mentioned about before, the Switzerland and the other countries has already made a new legislation about the cryptocurrency and some stuff. And I'm so wondering about your predictions for the regulations in Turkey post 2024 as a micro and macro perspective.
Sure. I think, for micro, we don't know how this will be enacted, but as per the unofficial draft law, we see, for example, custody services, and we see a reference to banks or licensed institutions. So if, banking sector is very, very strong in Turkey, and we also have great fintech provision. So that's very interesting to see, actually. So what we will probably expect to see is if banks will be involved with it, and on an issue such as custody, there will be a lot of know-how that will be innovated. However, there is a concern both for like the custody services and the platform services, which is important to note. The unofficial draft that we see has very harsh terms for penalties, and for personal liability as well, and the liability of these virtual asset service providers. So the personal criminal charges are higher than any other regulation, which I think is not really fair. It is not okay to put these persons under liability. I understand that there is an incentive to protect consumers and customers and any people who are using these services, but it is not fair to treat them on a higher level than what banks are seeing or what the other capital markets instruments related companies are seeing. So that's, I believe, is something important. The second thing that we will see as a micro change, I think, it also creates a lot of liability for the crypto asset service, the virtual asset service providers and platforms, such as creating additional guidelines, having additional precautions, how they will contract it. So this is also important. So this means that the platforms, the ongoing platforms, will need to have a lot of work done with their lawyers and legal consultants, also with their compliance teams to abide by these laws. It would be great to have some kind of, reference term and adaptation term, and not to ask for them to adapt on day zero. But there will be a lot of changes that way as well. And I think third micro change that we will see is this law also gives a lot of importance to cyber attacks and again protection for pricing changes, but this is not something that we see a lot on the regulations on EU or other jurisdictions. So I would assume we'll probably need some kind of ease there to, make it sensible, because it's not sensible to say you're liable for everything in this market, which is very, very new and will of course have some problems at day zero. So we need to abide by that. But on the micro perspective, I think it may push smaller players out of the market in a short term. Again, in micro perspective, it may require a lot of legal compliance and some vague term. But in the macro perspective, and especially when the secondary legislation comes, and if it comes on a way that allow these virtual asset service providers to thrive and to innovate, I think in macro perspective that will create a more stable market, that will create a lot of opportunities, and that will create a lot of opportunities for foreign investors to invest in Turkey in a manner that they understand and they're comfortable with, because they know how the laws will work.
Yeah, thank you. This might have a big impact on the stability and growth of the Turkish market.
Yes, if the secondary legislation comes that way, not in a limited way. We hope for it.
We hope for it. And also, I think the regulations is waiting for the elections. Maybe there may be a surprise on April. What do you think about that? Also, the timing issues.
I really don't know. And that's a question I got asked a lot from clients as well. Mehmet Şimşek has noted before that, they want to enact it end of January. So we passed that deadline. Mm-hmm. But there is a financial action task force meeting scheduled for February, mid-February. So maybe that's the deadline that they're trying to reach at. And we have also seen under several tweets of different bureaucrats and parliament members that they have discussed this, and this will be enacted in the coming days. So I don't think that we're looking for very long-term enactment, but also there is a lot going on with Turkish economy, and this may not be the priority, to be honest. So I don't know about the timing. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would say probably first week of February. But as we're reaching the first week of February, I am in a position to say I really, really don't know. But if there will be a timeline for it, I really wish, for any organization involved with this to have an official draft, and to allow all market participants to see these drafts, because although there are meetings, it's not open to any potential investors, any market participants who may be looking at Turkish market and trying to understand what's happening. So it would be great to know this information. I also asked this to a member of the Capital Markets Board, a legal head of the Capital Markets Board on a conference. And she also responded as we're following the news. So they didn't give any hints on that either. So I really don't know, and I really don't want to make any assumptions at this point.
I appreciate your attention to the potential impacts and timing of the proposed legislation. And I want to continue with our last question. How will the cryptocurrency regulation draft law impact the Turkish market?
Yep, I think I try to provide a general understanding of what I think will happen in the Turkish market, but again, I hope for it to bring more clarity on what's happening. There is also a lot of unsolved questions, like what will happen for DeFi, what will happen to NFT sales, what will happen to companies who are not actually platforms but doing some auxiliary asset services, such as maybe providing a little bit part of it, or doing different procedures which is not involved a virtual asset per se, or a virtual assets which is similar to electronic money or real world assets. So we have a lot of questions that are not answered in this unofficial draft law, which I hope they will be answered as well, because we need a lot of clarity. There is a lot of also processes which are used by different parts in the world, and there is a lot of innovative products which Turkish platforms are not really trying to adapt to. And I understand, because there is a lot of gray area which we don't know how this will be adapted. And I think a problem with the current system is because there is no open legal text. Authorities such as central bank, capital markets board, or a banking regulatory and supervisory authority also doesn't want to give a lot of comments on this. So we actually don't know how the current laws will apply to crypto assets, and that creates also a lot of gray areas. I hope that with the start of this regulation, that issues will also be solved, and Turkey try to create an innovative environment for all participants, and Turkish users are not held back from any other citizens of other countries that can reach these products. I really understand that these are sometimes complex products, and consumers are users are not protected in many ways, but protection is not about limiting the use. Protection is about educating the users and having some rules that will protect them. So I hope that this is the path that we will also move forward.
Yeah, that's what we are trying to do here in Turkey, to educate everybody about not only about crypto, because crypto is the main asset of blockchain technology and it has a huge technology behind it. There is a lot beyond crypto, and we are trying to make the community understand this. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for all your answers. Abba, would you like to say something?
Okay, I would like to say this last thing. I appreciate your attention to the potential impacts of the proposed legislation, and this law may have the potential to significantly impact the Turkish cryptocurrency market and create a more stable and established investment environment as a clean crypto ecosystem. As an EAK Digital team, thank you very much for participating in today's webinar and for your valuable contributions.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's great to talk to you.